dedication to our students. So on to our next presenter. I just want to introduce Vince. He's the CEO of Credenda Virtual High School and College. So Vince, you are up.
I have that unfortunate disability that once you get to a certain age, you have to take your glasses and put them on top of your head because you can't see the screen here. So, first of all, thank you for inviting myself to be able to speak here, and I really look forward to this. You know, over the last 2 days, I really, I hope that you folks have been as encouraged as I have been about what's happening across the province. We have absolutely some amazing things happening. When you think about technology and where it's come and where it's going, I remember, you know, back in the day, back in the 90s, when we were still using satellite to get our internet, and then all of a sudden we were going to get a DSL connection, and wow, that was fantastic. We were excited, and we had these little boxes sitting in our schools, and you know, routing things, and then finally we were starting to talk about we were going to get high-speed internet, and then now we're talking fiber. And that's exciting from the standpoint of what's happening in education, but I still think that we have a long ways to go. I think that we really have to push things a little bit harder here, I think. And our challenge, and it was funny because I wrote up my little description of what I was going to speak on, and some of the organizers had a quick conference call with me and say, Vince, you need to tone it down a little bit. But because I want to say a few things here in particular about our funding issues. Our funding issues are absolutely atrocious. And folks, I'm going to tell you that if you're from a First Nations community, I hope you're listening, and I hope you take this message back to the Chief and Council. Because the reality is, unless we get on the bandwagon and start really making a noise, we are going to be totally messed up in terms of what's happening with the funding pieces. When you think about what's happening, I was part of the broadband initiative that was in northern Saskatchewan with PAGC and MLTC and SaskTel. And we were able to get that high speed into each of those communities, and that was exciting. We were thinking great opportunities coming. But everything is contingent on the funding piece. And that's why I entitled this session, Connectivity Issues plus Funding Issues equals Lower Student Achievement. Well, the reason I say that, and it sounds rather maybe negative to even talk this way, in particular in light of all the positives we were hearing about, you know, the health initiatives, and that's absolutely fantastic. I'm just utterly amazed. I mean, and just this morning, one of our instructors is now living in Namibia in southern Africa for the next 4 months, working on a project there with NAMCOL. And she was having a help desk issue, and I just went out here in the hallway, and I logged onto her computer, and I fixed her up, and she's good to go, and she's back. Everything's good and working well. So yes, technology is working. But the reality is that with all the stuff that's going on with CommunityNet in terms of the paying, and KCDC happened to kind of walk away from that because, and I sit on the KCDC board, and what a challenge that has been to get the funding to be consistent on a regular basis. It's been a non-stop fight year after year after year. Imagine how many of our staff that within KCDC also having to brace themselves for a layoff notice just before, the 1st of March, because we don't have any funding being promised for April 1, and all this stuff that's been happening on just that front. So you take that and combine that with the funding component that we're having, and I'm telling you that the reality is the result will be, if we don't get this thing fixed and addressed, our student achievement levels will start to decline. We've been on the increase for the past years because we've had some things going forward, but I'm telling you, with the reality of what's happening in this particular government, it is absolutely just terrible. Now, we do have an opportunity at this time with Anna Fontaine, who is our new RDG in Saskatchewan, who is an educator from Manitoba. She's got the right heart. But the unfortunate reality is that she's getting her marching orders from Ottawa. And unless we start to really make a lot of noise about this issue at Ottawa level, and I'm going to encourage you that you need to start embracing and engaging with your MPs. This is a piece that when we've been talking about with, I was actually approached recently by a couple of First Nations leaders that said they have just started to talk to the MPs. And I'm saying it better start happening more. The reason why is the MPs are actually the ones that are going back to Ottawa, taking the message that are saying we have got to address this funding. They want to get elected, so we have to get into their face and actually say it's time we start doing things here. Now, you might think I'm coming across a little hostile and a little angry. That may be a bit of my Mohawk nature here, and I'm tired of this. The reality is that we've been fighting this battle, it seems like, for a long time, but we're getting great success. The reality is that we started an initiative like Credenda Virtual High School in 2005. In 2005, we started out at PAGC because we wanted to address the math and science issues. We wanted to address how we had a deficiency in the northern communities with getting expert qualified individuals to come and live in those communities and work there. So we started up a virtual high school with math and sciences, and we're going, great. Now we can actually deliver this online and live contacts, and things are really starting to move along. And so when you think about it, and I want you to think about these numbers, in the past 9 years, Credenda has been able to offer over 4,900 classes to 4,900 different individuals in 9 years. Now think about how many opportunities people have been able to receive in terms of getting math, science credits that they wouldn't have been able naturally to get in a community. Now, it's not all been roses, it's not all been perfect. We've had connectivity issues over the years, and there's been challenges. We still have some of those issues. But the fact of the matter is, we started to get some success. Aboriginal Affairs came on board and said, you know what, we'll fund you. They've invested currently, to date, into Credenda Virtual High School. Over the last 9 years, they've invested almost $15 million. And the news last week that we received from Aboriginal Affairs that went out to every First Nation in Saskatchewan. They didn't even have the audacity to tell us and write us a letter. They wrote us a letter back last June saying maybe there was going to be something coming down the pipe. But instead what they did is they sent out a whole little binder to all the First Nations saying here's what's going to happen in terms of all the funding. They notified everybody that no longer, Credenda Virtual High School will no longer be funded as of September 2014. No more funding. You know what they decided to do was they said, here's what's going to happen. You want the Credenda Virtual High School courses? You have to pay for them yourselves, but guess what? You don't get any more money. So here's what the reality is, what's coming down the pipe for us. They take $1.5 million that we've been funded over every year for the last so many years. They decide that they're not going to fund us. Not only do they do that, but they do what? Have you been watching the news in terms of the NCBR funding? 65% of our NCBR funding being cut at each of the local levels. A program such as James Smith Training Initiative that's been incredibly successful, closing the doors June 30th this year because they lost $500 and some thousand in their NCB funding. Little Pine, $600,000 in NCB funding. All these different First Nations all across Canada losing their NCB funding. Early intervention child program funding, all gone. They've gone so far to even say, guess what, those of you that are at your school levels and teachers, we don't have to pay your teachers the same level as the STF or ATA